Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man. This time last year, in order to mark the occasion of the anniversary of Batman Arkham Asylum's release, I decided to take a look at what a potential Superman video game would look like. Well, I had my fun with that particular premise, and I decided to do something similar for, for this occasion. Only this time, instead of looking at Superman, I'm gonna turn my attention back to Batman, because while it is fair to say that Arkham Asylum was in many ways a paradigm shift when it comes, when it comes not only to how Batman himself is portrayed, but when it comes to how superhero games more broadly are depicted. It is still safe to say that the Batman Arkham franchise has seen some level of instability, and it started small with some missteps like Arkham City Lockdown or Arkham Origins Blackgate, but then ended up not necessarily being as not necessarily working as effectively, with Arkham Origins and Arkham Knight being broadly speaking, at least at the time of their release, much less well received than, okay, maybe not much less, but still noticeably less well received than Asylum and City. And then came the major kicker, which was Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League, which was supposed to take place within the same continuity, and led to a lot of people, and it was very unpopular, leading to a lot of people not, losing the appeal and losing the connection to the Arkham franchise more broadly. That step was somewhat mitigated with the next Arkham game, Arkham Shadow. However, because Arkham Shadow was exclusively a VR title, not a lot of people actually got to experience it. And while the game itself, as I've been told, was quite good, it ultimately didn't really reach the audience that the audience would have needed in order to really salvage the Batman Arkham franchise. So to that end, I think it is fair to say that we will not be seeing another game in the Arkham continuity. However, earlier this year, Lego Batman Legends of the Dark Knight was released, and it seemed to receive a lot of praise from people, from all kinds of people, superhero fans, gaming fans, what have you. So therefore, it is fair to say that there is still a demand for Batman video games, but maybe not in the Arkham mold. So in that sense, I thought I would throw my own hat in the ring and talk about how I think a new Batman video game series ought to look like. And while I typically talk about stories in this game, in the videos like this, I do want to start a little bit with the gameplay itself, and more precisely with what I want to emphasize. Because Arkham Knight very much delved into Batman as a martial artist, and as someone with a particular strength of will. That's something that came up again and again over the course of the franchise. And while those are interesting aspects, they are not really what I would call his defining aspects. And in many ways, while the Arkham games were effective in their own way, they also brought some level of misconception to how exactly Batman operates. And it is these misconceptions that I want this new iteration to work against. And I want to bring him more in line with the world's greatest detective aspects of his personality. Okay. To that end, games from this new series won't all be one night marathons of violence like the Arkham games were, but rather they will take place over several days, several weeks, maybe even months, where showcasing Batman going on investigations, gathering clues, figuring stuff, and figuring out a whole series of cases that could be that could be connected to something, that could be connected to a greater plot, or could or maybe aren't. There will still be occasional fights, but really the main focus is going to be more on exploration, on investigation, and on how Batman himself, be it under the cowl, be it in the guise of Bruce Wayne, be it even potentially in the guise of Matches Malone, is actually connected to Gotham City, and how that connection becomes involved in dealing with crime in Gotham City. So yeah, that is my angle for this. It'll be a little bit more investigative, a little bit more social. So what stories do and I'm also going to be basing them more or less on specific stories that I want to specific Batman stories that I want to more directly adapt into into this new mold as a video game. And what specifically are these stories that I want to delve into? Well, starting off, I think the most logical place to begin is right at the beginning with, where's the mouse? Here. Batman Year 1. Batman, so yeah, I'm gonna start, so yeah, this video game series is gonna start with Batman himself also being in the beginning. And therefore he will have some familiar equipment, but still in a stripped down and simplified fashion. And it is within this capacity that I imagine him dealing primarily with crime families, mobsters, crime bosses, that kind of crowd, because that is what I imagine would be the main movers and shakers when it comes to crime, or when it comes to illicit activities within Gotham City. And also, something I should have perhaps mentioned a little bit earlier, I do intend for these games to roughly be period pieces, in the sense that I kind of want this Batman to start out somewhere either in the 30s or in the 50s. When this kind of when this kind of mafia would have been more would have been a more plausible image or understanding of crime. There is still white collar crime today, and it would be something that Batman would still attack. But there are a certain set of characters that are unique and distinctive to Gotham, to the setting, that I really want to bring to the forefront of the story. And however, it won't just be Batman investigating the crimes of this, investigating the crimes of these families, and doing his best to clean the streets of their influence. I do imagine that some of these crime families would slowly maybe empower some of their henchmen, or some of their underlings in specific ways to act as enforcers. So Batman would, in that sense, also deal with some with a few supervillains, guys like maybe the Electrocutioner, maybe Firefly, maybe I wonder if it would be too early to include Prometheus at at this point within Batman's journey. Just as an option. But anyway, you get the idea here. This is basically the start of crime fighting being going from being primarily between cops and mobsters to the time when it becomes Batman or the Bat Family going up against supervillains. Speaking of the Bat Family, while I don't intend it to be part of the main game, I do intend for potentially a DLC to this first game to include the story of how Dick Grayson becomes Robin. And yeah, that would basically be the story of this first game. The second game would follow Batman Dark Victory. Yeah. Now it's somewhat easy to one of the first or second stories or second major stories that is technically within the Batman canon is the Long Halloween, and it is one of those that gets a lot of praise. But personally, this is one that I think would make a more interesting game. It is a direct sequel to the Long Halloween, and it does in some to some extent more directly exacerbate that that war or that changing of the guard within crime, as in it is a more direct example of the ascension of superheroes and the crime families losing their power and therefore their influence. And that is what I want this particular comic to really showcase. And it could be where people like Two-Face, like Catwoman, like Penguin, like the Joker would would also make their appearances as their given that the power vacuum within the within the crime perpetrator scene of Gotham would be opened up, and they would be they could potentially be the first be some of the early beneficiaries of this particular shift. And also it does showcase Batman's arsenal becoming a little bit more advanced, and Batman himself becoming a little bit more skilled, a little bit more aggressive potentially in his war on crime. I do imagine him potentially taking on his second Robin, Jason Todd, maybe even Batgirl, and by that I mean the first Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, over the course of this book. And therefore we're really slowly building the Bat Family as a counterpart to the crime families. So even though the crime families are dying out, it does still Batman himself would still in this sense present the counterpoint to crime, and also as I said earlier in this video, talking about the social dimension of crime, these secondary characters could become an avenue for him to really delve into that and to really explore what it means to deal with those. And I imagine this game could also showcase him as Bruce Wayne dealing with crime, and using the resources of Wayne Enterprises to help lift people out of poverty, provide them with stable employment, and all kinds of other facilities. Next, the next game in this franchise or in this series would be really the major one, potentially the center point of this franchise, in that it'll be Batman No Man's Land. Yeah, No Man's Land is, if anything, if looking through the Arkham games, it is probably the most direct, the most direct basis. The most direct basis from the between the most direct point of comparison between the comics and the Arkham games, because it is about Gotham City itself becoming isolated from the from the rest of the USA through through whatever means, and that leaves Batman to run around the city to make sure that peace, to the highest extent possible, is still maintained, all while criminals carve out various territories within the city. And and again, even though I did draw the comparison to the Arkham games, this is another game that would take place over over weeks or over months, as as Batman's trying to figure out how exactly the city became isolated, and also dealing with the fallout of its isolation, while also battling various various supervillains as they try to as they each try to muscle in on each other's territory, making sure that the or as they try to capture him. So all in all, he'll do his best to to maintain the peace, and also the side characters would be brought into this. Also with the side characters, the bad families I've already mentioned. The composition of which I haven't really figured out yet. It is somewhat of a fluid aspect, but I do imagine them potentially going on various missions or assignments in order to figure out various aspects of several investigations, in order to help Batman maintain whatever semblance of peace could still exist within that within that particular kind of setting. And this is really the last of the stories that the games that I want to showcase over the course of this video that is directly based on a comic book story. The rest are really where I take a villain, or rather a group of villains, and really build the story, around that. And the first of these second stories, or these second category stories, is the Court of Owls. Yes, really. And if anything, yeah, I know the Court of Owls has already had their time in Gotham Knights, which arguably was another misstep when it comes to adapting the Batman IP to video games. But still, the point is they have been introduced before. People kind of have an idea of who they are, so it makes sense to introduce them here, especially because especially with the current political climate being as it is, and people turning a little bit more against the against the wealthy, and second guessing the legitimacy of being able to actually gather wealth. And as such, I think the Court of Owls, through their position of being some of the richest or most well-off families within within Gotham, and would very much kind of shake a little, because they notice there are so many because they notice that their things are no longer going their way, so they activate this particular protocol, which is very much a hard reset aimed at restoring their power, restoring their strength. And really, of all the games within this franchise that I'm thinking of rebuilding or of establishing, I think this game would be the one that is going to be most like the typical Arkham games, where all hell breaks loose, and the good guys basically have one night over the course of which to to put everything back into place, or at least to contain damages. And and yeah, so this will be the most action packed of the games. You could potentially include some of the, something of some aspect of how the Court of Owls was first introduced, with or potentially of Gotham Knights, with Bruce Wayne being with Batman being isolated from the rest of his family, leaving the rest to try to figure out what's going on and how to most effectively counter it, and then and that would potentially give the Court of Owls the justification that they were attacked first by by the Bat Family, so them retaliating against the Bat Family and rest of the city is would be is entirely fair from from their perspective. and after this fourth game, we reach the conclusion of this series, at least at least as far as I've seen it, where the Bat Family will really face against their biggest opponents, the League of Assassins. Yeah. Some would say that I directly want to compare and contrast the League of the League of Assassins here, because if you've been listening to this video so far, then you will have noticed a little bit of a theme. I've talked about it quite a bit, the the social dimension of being Batman, and about how it is that, and how throughout a lot of the series so far, I've talked about how about investigations, about getting to know the community, about connecting to that, and in that sense, the villains kind of also represent a transformation based on that based on that particular theme. You first have crime families, then you got supervillains, and then you have the Court of Owls. All of which to some extent represent a represent a shift in the way in the way crime is viewed, and crime is crime is really displayed from from the actions of large oppositional entities to to individual opportunists, to to really large scale white collar crime, the same way as the Court of Owls. So how would the League of Assassins fit into this paradigm? Well, the League of Assassins really represents a the thing about the League of Assassins is that I in some way see them as an inversion of the Court of Owls, because the Court of Owls are rich and glamorous first, and then killers second. The League of Assassins kind of breaks with their that pretense, in the sense of being killers first, then rich and pretentious. The idea basically here would come down to the fact that they would be to raising the distinction. The League of Assassins may be more direct when it comes to how it carries out its task, but the Court of Owls is still equally would still be equally ruthless. And in this situation, I imagine the League of Assassins would be the biggest challenge that this particular Batman and Bat Family will have faced, because they have that because while they are ruthless, they still they embody that same pragmatism that that the Bat Family themselves also faces. So in a way, it's maybe not a mirror match, but it is very much a battle of wits, of intentions, of ideologies, and ultimately of attrition, of trying to make sure that their desired philosophy actually ends up winning out over the course of the day. And it is here that and it is for this reason that I really emphasize the importance of Batman gathering allies, gathering supporters, because all of them would come together over the course of for the sake of this game. Some would argue, some could question now, well, if this takes place over this long a time, why wouldn't the rest of the Justice League be called up? And I imagine the answer would be that they all have their own concerns for for whatever reason. I'm not gonna get into that. The point is, the Bat Family has to figure out in at their own in their own rate, at their own pace, with their own, and has to be able to combat this really this invasion or this infiltration with the means that they can personally access. Also, these games also something else that I want to mention about these games is that all of them would take place not over a somewhat stretched out period of time, given that the games themselves would also take place over over anywhere between days and months. I imagine they could take place over either one decade or ideally several decades. So we would see, so the series would see Batman starting out, as well as in this game, it would see Batman's career coming to an end with with him defeating this this dark mirror of himself in Ra's al Ghul, in and thereby making sure that the that the model of this model of ruthless pragmatism would fail in this in a larger battle in this larger war against crime. Because really, what is crime except except a breakdown in public trust? It is a breakdown in the people's confidence that the system that the society works upon works for them, and works for them, and that is what this series is, and that is what the series will showcase. Batman being the head of an alternative model, so to speak, something where something where people can find trust, find support, find confidence, and find confidence in such a way as to maintain a better condition, not just for themselves but for others as well. The League of Assassins, by contrast, is first of all more ruthless. Second of all, it is less focused on cooperation. It is more more organized around the. It is more structured around the organized application of violence, like point solutions to pointed solutions to pointed issues. With no broader system necessarily being in sight, which might solve one problem but can open up several more. And it is this model of indifference to collateral damage that the that the Bat Family would pose, and thereby make sure that a broader systemic approach, one based more on mutual cooperation and catching each other, supporting each other, and ends up winning out over a system that relies on the organized and regimented inoculation of violence that Raish himself would display. And with that, and with this, I imagine that Batman himself could be, would retire after this because his body would be, could potentially be way too broken down to meaningfully continue, or maybe or maybe he has a change of heart through some other means, which would leave his, which could leave his extended cast to do whatever in their own ways. But then, in the future, opens up the possibility for a Batman Beyond video game. I haven't seen too much Batman Beyond. I don't really know what the what kind of stories go on over there, but I do happen to know enough but I do know enough to know that this would be an interesting idea, and it is very much something that people have called for. I think Arkham Beyond was at least one title that was vehiculated as a potential solution, as a potential future Arkham game. And interesting as that idea may be, we are currently not there yet. However, I do think that this particular approach towards the Batman IP would in some way facilitate the emergence of a Batman Beyond adaptation. Because because within the universe there would already be this model of cooperation that that seems to dissipate on a high, and therefore but still the idea would still be floating around in the ether or the collective unconscious, and then at some point it would be picked up. That mental would be picked up by someone who would who would then go on to embody and revitalize that. And that is really what Batman Beyond would end up doing against against whatever new generation of crime or manifestation of crime would emerge. And yeah, that's it. That is my take on what a potential Batman video game series would look like. I hope you've enjoyed my take. Assuming that to be the case, well then please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the concept of the video itself or to how I actually fleshed it out, that is what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. Ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where I talk about the print medium and selected works therein, primarily. So if that sounds like it could be up your alley, then I suggest you go ahead and check it out. Link in the description down below. Right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out, should you choose to. If that doesn't interest you, then I suggest you stay on this channel and go for my extensive backlog, which covers, which does occasionally cover various pitches, be they for, occasionally for video games too, but primarily for television and cinema. And when it comes to television and cinema, I also do reviews, overviews, and other stuff. While also covering other stuff in different kinds of categories. Just go to my backlog. You'll find something to your liking. If, however, that prospect is not something that interests you, well, then I suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was it for me. So until next time, I have been the One Take Man.